You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button. This was courtesy of Matt Zenitz over at On3, who just kind of continues to be fantastic breaking news guy there for On3, and prior was at AL.com. But Matt Zenitz reported that LSU is expected to add to their support staff. They are expected, the Tigers are, to hire Kennesaw State defensive ends coach Kynjee Cotton as a defensive analyst. Cotton's a former Alabama State All-Conference defensive lineman, team captain, worked at Samford for 3 seasons before Kennesaw State. So it looks like Brian Kelly there expanding and adding to his support staff. A couple of things when I saw this. First of all, this is obviously a replacement for Gerald Chapman. Remember, of course, LSU during spring football lost their defensive line coach to the Denver Broncos. So when they needed an interim defensive line coach, they promoted Gerald Chapman from analyst to defensive line coach. And I think Chapman was probably hopeful that he was going to get that job full time. And that didn't happen, of course, as they went and hired Jimmy Lindsey from South Carolina, which is a fantastic hire, to replace Jamar Cain, who, of course, left for the Denver Broncos. But Chapman then left and took a job at Tulane as their defensive line coach. So he was at LSU as an analyst and left to go be an on-field coach at Tulane. It's hard to blame him for doing that. And so that just left you with a vacancy on your support staff for the defensive line, which necessitated going to replace Chapman. So here they've done it now with Kynjee Cotton from Kennesaw State. Just a little background that'll give you some more reaction. So as we mentioned, Kynjee Cotton, he played at Alabama State. When his playing career ended, he jumped into the coaching ranks. Initially was a strength and conditioning intern at Alabama back in 2013. So good pedigree there. Went to UAB as a GA in 2014. Defensive line coach at Birmingham Southern in 2015. Went up to North Carolina with the Tar Heels. Was a quality control coach for 2 years, 2016, 2017. Then was the defensive ends coach at West Georgia. Then 3 seasons at Samford. And then most recently at Kennesaw State. So you can see, like, coaching is such a transient profession. Not that this is new, but just since 2013, in 10 years that Kenji Cotton's been coaching, he's gone from strength and conditioning intern at Alabama for a year, to UAB for a year, to Birmingham Southern for a year, to North Carolina for 2 years, to West Georgia, and then Samford for 3 years, and then Kennesaw State. I mean, that's in 10 years, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stops. Now, LSU's his 8th stop in 11 seasons. You grind your face off to get your opportunity, and now he's got an opportunity to join LSU staff, which I'm sure he hopes will be a springboard into something, on field in the Power 5 ranks. But defensive analysts are very valuable at a place like LSU. Just follow me here. I just gave you the example of Gerald Chapman. Chapman was a guy who was more than capable of coaching on the field. You had him as an analyst, sort of coaching with the coaches, and the analyst can now coach in practice as well. So, again, he just got a full-time job on the field at Tulane. Remember John Jancic? John Jancic was a staffer for Kirby Smart at Georgia. Brian Kelly gets the LSU job, brings John Jancic in as an analyst to get him on staff with a promise, hey, we're going to get you back on the field as soon as we can. A year passes, and now John Jancic is your outside linebackers coach and special teams coordinator. Even before Brian Kelly was here, Greg McMahon. When Ed Orgeron hired Greg McMahon, he hired him as an analyst before the 10th on-field assistant was approved, and then a year later became your special teams coordinator. remember Meatball? I mean, now this was a GA before you had these deep staffs of analysts, but Dennis Johnson, Meatball, was a defensive line grad assistant. And then ultimately, when Ogeron got the job, hired him as a linebackers coach, defensive line coach after Pete Jenkins, and then now he's at Baylor with Dave Aranda. You want to go a step further? Look at Alabama. Steve Sarkisian was an analyst at Alabama. Butch Jones was an analyst at Alabama. Todd Grantham is an analyst at Alabama. So I'm not telling you necessarily that there's a huge role for Kynjee Cotton at LSU on this staff in 2023, that the impact is going to be massive. But one thing is very clear, that coaches at these major Power 5 schools, when they have the resources to hire a lot of analysts, a lot of support staff, in many respects what they are doing is they are stockpiling coaching talent. It almost becomes like your own coaching farm system. You get these really talented young coaches, or in the case of guys like Sarkisian or Todd Grantham or John Jancic, very experienced coaches. You find a way to get them on your staff. They assimilate into your culture, your staff, and everything you're doing. And then when you have an on-field opening, so many times you don't have to scour the land for that replacement. You hire from within because you got a great assistant right there who already knows your processes, your culture, how everything works, your personnel, game planning, who's been in the meeting rooms. So a lot of that makes sense. So just something on a Tuesday where LSU is primarily going through recruiting and camp season, and so much of the focus is on building up your recruiting classes, and guys are having player-led workouts right now. You don't typically see a lot of coaching moves, but this is one that kind of slipped through today and makes sense to keep an eye on as a guy who, talented young guy, has been coaching for a decade now, who's got heavy experience on the defensive line. They're bringing him in, probably help recruit on campus, and then and help with the defensive line, and could very well be one of those guys that's a rising star in the profession. So Kynjee Cotton, LSU is hired as a defensive line analyst, replacing Gerald Chapman, who left for Tulane. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.